And with Andy Toole, I'm Chris Shovlin, the play-by-play voice of the Robert Morris University Colonials, and we welcome you live here to Gibsonia tonight on a frightful night weather-wise. I'll tell you what, the two of us made it here, so everybody else should show up too, right?
I'm not sure how I made it here, to be honest with you, but I'm glad to be here. And you know, I'm going to maybe not take it personally that there's not as many people in the seats in front of us this week, and I'm going to blame it on the inclement weather and not take it as a personal attack on your eye show.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, Coach, I think the radio audience has grown by leaps and bounds because people couldn't make it out tonight. So they're all back home listening to ESPN 970 for one solid hour of great basketball talk with the head coach of the Robert Morris University Colonials, Andy Toole. And you're coming off a split over this past weekend trip. We went up to Brooklyn, and first game, not so great. It was St. Francis Terriers tearing into Robert Morris, and obviously the Colonials were missing their heart and soul in that game after about 3 minutes in. We'll get to that in a little bit. But you ended up with a split, and on a positive note, got a win on another very tough floor, and that is against Long Island University of Brooklyn, the team that held you out of the NCAA tournament for the last 2 years. I'm even sorry to bring that up, but let's face it, that was a big, big win over a team that has had Robert Morris's number over the past couple of seasons.
It was a huge win. You know, obviously disappointed with the outcome on Thursday night, and you know, a lot of credit goes to St. Francis and Glenn Breaka and the job that his team did on Thursday. They had a terrific game plan. They executed very, very well. We didn't make the necessary adjustments that we needed to do in order to make ourselves or give ourselves a better chance to be successful in that game. And so, you know, we watched that tape Thursday night. We watched some of it with the guys. We really tried to teach, you know, and I think we really challenged our guys to respond in a positive way. And I think we challenged them in a, you know, how they were going to handle some adversity, being on the road, losing the first game of a road trip, an extremely tough road trip. Anytime you go to Brooklyn and play St. Francis and LIU, it's both games are going to be complete wars. And I was very proud of the way we responded on Saturday. I was very proud of the way that guys stayed together and continued to work through our game plan, execute our game plan. And there were numerous times during the course of that second half where there were some things that, you know, weren't going in our favor, but we continued to play and continued to work. You know, we were up 8 points. They came back, you know, tied the game, took the lead. You know, we never let the lead go more than one bucket. You know, we answered every time we needed to. And then coming down the stretch, we had, you know, a number of guys step up and make huge plays for us.
There were tremendous offensive plays. As you mentioned, there were times when you needed a bucket, you got the bucket, and there was an exchange of buckets. But there were a lot of possessions by both clubs that the shots were so tough that they just couldn't possibly go in. And that is testament to the defense by your two ball clubs and in this league as well.
Absolutely. You know, our offense, the offenses in the league this year are getting a little more recognition, but I still think the team that's going to eventually win this league is going to be a strong defensive ball club. And I hope that it's us. But I know that, you know, in that second half of the LIU game, you know, possessions were at a premium. We tried to kind of really shrink the game a little bit. We tried to control tempo. And so you had to execute. You really had to work to get the shot you wanted. And LIU had the same thing. You know, we were switching defenses. They were switching defenses. You know, so you had to identify whether they were in man or they were in zone. Then you had to try and get, you know, the personnel in the right places, and then hope your guys could make a shot at the end of all of that, you know, decision making. And you know, we were just fortunate to make one more shot than they did.
Before we break the games down further, and we'll start with St. Francis and then move back to the Long Island game, let's talk about defense in this conference. I think people who don't have a closeness to the NEC don't realize how defensive a league this is and how hard it is that the offenses have to play to get points down, and that's why we see so many lower scoring games in our league, I think.
I think there's a number of reasons why some of the scores are lower scoring. Obviously, I think if you look at conference play around the country, not just in the Northeast Conference, I think you'll see scores are a little bit lower than maybe the non-conference games just because scouting's so good. I mean, there's so much information that is available to each and every team and each and every program as they prepare for opponents. And once you get into conference play, you know each other inside and out. You know, you might add one wrinkle or, you know, maybe a new set here or there, or maybe a counter to something that you were running, but so much of this stuff has been scouted. Teams know each other's personnel, they know each other's plays, they know each other's tempo, they know each other's tendencies, and they know that stuff so well that that makes it difficult to score. And then when you look at, you know, some of the teams in our league, whether it's St. Francis, Central Connecticut State, LIU, Wagner, Monmouth, teams that are really coming after you defensively night in and night out. Mount St. Mary's, who, you know, is playing that mayhem style. But, you know, it's a league where there are a lot of teams that are fighting to, you know, limit the strengths of their opponent, trying to take away things that they do best. And, you know, St. Francis was really able to take away a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do on Thursday. You know, we were more successful at executing on Saturday, and I think that was kind of the difference in the outcomes.
You know, it almost gets to the point, if you see enough NEC games, and I see our team, you know, each and every game, home and away, obviously I can tell when the coaches have scouted us well and when they haven't, just because I think I know our personnel well enough that I would say, okay, this guy has a tendency of not shooting at first. He'll give you the head fake, and then he'll drive to the right. And if I see teams trying to stop us, then I know they've done a good job coaching. If I see teams not trying to stop an individual player doing that, then I'm thinking they missed that.
Yeah, there's good staffs in our league. You know, there's guys that are, you know, really coaching up their teams. I think when I first got in the league 6 years ago, you know, I'll be honest, there was a couple nights where you'd look out and say, yeah, I don't know how well they prepared their team for this game, but, you know, it seems night in and night out now in the league, and there's been a lot of turnover of coaches in the league during my time as an assistant and as a head coach, that everybody is preparing their teams well and, you know, really trying to take away one or two things that we do, one or two guys that we have. You know, I think one of the things on Saturday night that was effective for us was, you know, we had multiple guys that were making perimeter shots, and so it's hard to take away. You know, they did a good job of taking away Karan Williams. Well, Carvel Anderson and Lucky Jones and Russell Johnson then stepped up and made shots, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week of trying to have as much balance and versatility as you can as an offensive team, so that when you see something being taken away, now you can try and counter it with something else. Thursday night, I didn't do a very good job of making the adjustments I needed to, in terms of they really were taking away our perimeter. Mike was in foul trouble in the post of trying to find an alternate route to get to the basket. You know, Karan and Carvel had very limited looks. They weren't very good looks. Anthony Myers was doing a nice job of breaking down the defense again to the rim, and maybe that's something that we should have gone back to, continuing to try and get him in the lane and see if we could get some easy buckets. But, you know, that's some of the stuff you learn as you go through film, and, you know, it's some of the good coaching that is in this league.
Andy Toole Show. We're live here at Buffalo Wild Wings on Route 8 in Gibsonia. I'm Chris Shovlin, the play-by-play announcer at Robert Morris University, and we're talking Colonial basketball. And again, with the weather as bad as it is in Pittsburgh here tonight, and I know we have a listenership not just here in the tri-state area, but all across the country, thanks to iHeartRadio. Obviously, we're accepting tweets. If you're listening in tonight, whether you're listening on the radio or on the World Wide Web, you can tweet your questions to Coach Toole using the hashtag AskToole. That's AskToole, hashtag AskToole, for your question for Andy Toole, the head coach of the Robert Morris University Colonials. Again, live at Buffalo Wild Wings on Route 8 in Gibsonia here on ESPN 970. Let's talk further about the St. Francis game. Obviously, the biggest obstacle that you faced, Coach Toole, was the fact that you lost your starting point guard, Belton Jones. And, you know, we have talked ad nauseum about his value to the ball club, the fact that he is the heart and soul of this club. I know that's a term that you've used, that we've all copied, and obviously a lot of the newspaper writers, a lot of the reporters who follow Colonial basketball are picking up on that as well. It's the honest to God's truth, though. He is the heart and soul of your club, and 3 minutes into the ball game, he was gone. He couldn't go.
Yeah, and in such a freak manner that he ends up getting hurt, you know, just trying to footstep a screen and, you know, get around and stay on one of their best shooters as tight as he could, and, you know, just made contact with the screen with his right shoulder, and it was kind of the only contact that he made, so the rest of his body, you know, continued to trail, and his shoulder stayed behind, and so, you know, had a shoulder injury, and, you know, it was 1-0 at that point in the game. It might have been the third possession of the game, and, you know, like I talked about with St. Francis doing such a great job of taking away some of our perimeter shooting, when you lose one of your best playmakers, it really makes it difficult. It really does. And so Ant Myers did a great job, played a very good game for us. But, you know, if you could have more guys that were attacking the rim, and Velton's one of our best guys at attacking the rim, you know, him going out hurt a lot of our offensive flow. And, you know, not to mention some of the toughness and the defensive rebounding and just some of those uncomfortable situations that you get in during the course of a game that really are the difference between winning and losing. You know, 2 or 3 guys scrambling for a loose ball. You know, a ball is getting deflected. Are you going to come up with it? Some of those 50-50 balls that Velton's, you know, had a propensity of getting over the time at Robert Morris.
Is there a propensity for a deflationary moment when you see somebody like that go down if you're a teammate?
I'm not sure. I think it depends on the situation, to be honest with you. I know last year in the championship game when he went down with the rib injury, you could feel a little bit of the wind, get taken out of our sail. We've had some other games this year. He didn't play against Sacred Heart, and I think the guys really rallied around the fact that he wasn't playing and really worked together. And so I think it just depends on the situation. I'll be honest. I think when he was out, I think there was a little bit of, not confusion, but I would say there's a little bit of nervousness from some of the other guys.
A little apprehension.
Yeah, exactly. Who are used to playing off of Velton, and Velton does a good job of giving other guys some confidence, and those are things that you miss and are critical in road situations.
You see a lot of the stuff, and obviously this week was Super Bowl weekend, so we saw a lot of video of quarterbacks in huddles in football games screaming signs of encouragement, statements of encouragement to their teammates and the rest of the 10 guys out there. Belton does that with his basketball team too. The other 4 guys get an earful of him when he's on the floor.
Yeah, and sometimes it's encouragement, and sometimes it's kicking the what, and that's okay. I think that's sometimes what leadership is about, is understanding when you need to pick some people up and understanding when you need to kind of shake them and grab their attention. And so it's something that we encourage from all of our guys. We want to have a team where if a guy's not holding up his end of the bargain or carrying his weight, where somebody is going to let him know that, and not always from the coaches, because a lot of times it has more meaning when it's coming from your teammate. And then if someone's doing, what they're supposed to do and doing a good job, you should be enthused and let them know that as well. And so I think mature teams, I think teams that have good chemistry are able to have those kind of conversations with each other. Understand that none of it's personal. We're all working for the same goal, and that's to be successful in the game, in the possession, in the half, in the season, in whatever. And that's what our thoughts and our actions are working towards.
So I guess constructive criticism can be heated at times and still pay dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's something that you should shy away from either. I think that good teams, if you're in an intense moment, it's an emotional game. People want to win. People take it extremely serious. They care about it very much. And usually when you care about something very deeply, there's times where you're going to have frustration if a teammate isn't doing what you believe he's capable of doing. And, as long as everyone understands that it's for the good of the team, then I think it's accepted well. And I think a lot of times that message is heard loud and clear.
Back to the St. Francis-Brooklyn game, 71-61, a defeat for Robert Morris, first conference road loss of the season. Was there anything in particular that you found that St. Francis did against you to try to stop you, to slow you down, and hold you down to 61 points?
Well, I thought they did a great job of just disrupting the timing of our offense. I thought they were very physical in areas that they needed to be physical. I thought they did a good job at denying some of our ball reversal, limiting some of our penetration, limiting some of our open looks. And so I think the flow of our offense was constantly, it was very choppy. There was a lot of times where we would call a set or we would go into an entry and there would be, it wouldn't work as smoothly, and so the timing would be off. And now all of a sudden guys screening or cutting might not be able to be as in sync as it should be. And I think that's what good defensive teams do. They really make you be detailed. And we weren't very detailed in our screening. We weren't very detailed in our maybe getting open and taking our space, some of those kinds of things. And that makes it very hard for you to get good shots, and it makes it very hard for you to run consistently effective offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a problem that night, there's no doubt about it. But we'll put that one behind us. Obviously, it cost you the first place standing that you were in. You were in a first place tie. Bryant right now is leading the league. They stand alone at 8-2. And they have been not only a very pleasant surprise to their fans, but perhaps a shocking surprise to a lot of folks around the NEC who thought that, let's face it, they were the doormat of the league last year, but everything has come together for them pretty well. And after this weekend, they come out of it with a 1-game lead over Robert Morris. Colonials are now just 1 game back, 7-3 in second place.
And I think that most of the coaches in the league knew that Bryant was going to be much improved and knew they were going to be in the top half of the league. I don't think that was a surprise to anybody. I think people knew that they had some transfers sitting out who were going to be very effective as soon as they became eligible. I think, from my standpoint, watching them play last year, at certain times they were missing, some of their key players due to injury. And so I think I looked at it as once they got all of those guys together and healthy, Coach O'Shea knows how to coach. He's done a very good job. He did a great job at Ohio U before he was at Bryant. Took Ohio U to the NCAA tournament, and has been at Bryant and has really built it the right way. And so I think they had pieces at every spot you need to be successful in this league. And then once they started to play together, I believe they developed a great chemistry. As you watch them play together, everybody knows their role, everybody does their job. They seem to really enjoy playing with each other, and they play the right way. And I think when you do all of those things, you have a chance to be very successful, and that's exactly what they've been.
All right, we'll get to the Long Island game and break that down a little bit for you and talk about the fact that it was nationally telecast. That was another thing. And it was great for a lot of the Colonial fans to see a road game for Robert Morris live on TV. But let's go to a couple of the tweeted questions that we have right now. And this is one that really stuck out to me when they passed it along to me. Matt Mellett sent this up. This is from Adam. And we've all been talking about the daily contracts that everybody is under, a day-to-day contract that you put every member of your club on. Adam says they really seem to be paying dividends. How do you review them each and every day with the individuals on your ball club?
Well, good question, Adam. They're reviewed in many different ways, I should say that maybe. Some of them are instantaneous feedback. Some of them are probably emotional outbursts by me to know where they stand. But I think at the end of the day, when we finish practice and we all kind of huddle up, I'll go through and kind of just give everyone my 2 cents. Sometimes they want to hear it, sometimes they don't. But I think that that's really where, we review the job performances on a daily basis. And I think that, again, I just think the best thing about it is it shrinks the focus for our guys, and it allows them to just worry about each and every day that we get to go on the floor together. And, I think when you worry about the practice in front of you or the lift in front of you or the scouting report in front of you, you might take it a little bit more seriously, or you might put a little more into it instead of thinking about the game that's coming in 3 days or the game that's coming in 5 days and, what's going to happen next week. And so I think it's just narrowed our focus to the point where we get productive time out of a lot of the things that we're doing.
I've noticed, and I agree with Adam, I think that they've paid dividends as well, and it seems like you've re-signed everybody so far. Has anybody been on the bubble?
We've had a couple practices where some guys didn't get renewed, and they had to work their way back off waivers. Couple minor league call-ups at times, but nothing for a game yet or anything that everybody else would see. But yeah, those are something that we take seriously as a staff, and I just think it's something that our guys have bought into, and like I said, hopefully it will continue to pay dividends.
And once again, a very pleasant good evening to you. Chris Shublin, the play-by-play voice of the Robert Morris University Colonials, with head coach Andy Toole here on the Andy Toole Radio Show on ESPN 970, live at Buffalo Wild Wings in Gibsonia, just up Route 8 tonight on a very snowy night here in Pittsburgh. And again, if you're listening and you're into Twitter, you can also always send us a question via Twitter using hashtag AskToole, AskToole. And we picked up a couple of questions so far tonight. We talked about the daily contracts before the break. And this one is from Brianne. This is a pretty interesting question here. Andy, what kind of dialogue do you establish with referees during basketball games? I think that's a great question.
Interesting. I got to be careful who's listening here.
Maybe the officials.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? It's kind of depends on the game. To be honest with you, I think that there's times where, when I first became a head coach, I decided that I was going to try not to say anything to the officials, and because I didn't think, number one, they would listen to anything that I had to say, and so I just thought, let me coach my team, let me try and really focus on what our guys are doing each and every possession. It's very hard to do when you're standing there on the sidelines and you see some of the things that are going on, and you realize that sometimes referees' calls are going to be directly affecting whether you guys are successful or not. And so, sometimes, like I said, it's hard to restrain yourself. And then I was actually talking to an older coach, and I kind of told him what my philosophy was, and he said, because I felt like it was actually hurting our calls we were getting, because I wasn't arguing, or I wasn't, really getting on the officials very much. And he said one of the things you have to do with officials sometimes is let them know you're there. And so I try and pick my spots. Knock on wood, I haven't got a technical this year. Only gotten 3 in the first 2.5 years. One my first year, which I think was just to teach me a lesson to stay kind of close to our bench somewhat. Got one at Duquesne for being completely out of the box from Mike Kitts, who's a great Big Ten official, and I think he was kind of showing me that he was in charge of the game.
Sure,
And,
sure.
you know, so I try not to get involved too much with the officials. I really do, and I try just to talk to them. I think I'm a little bit better at when they come by, just talking to them. The one issue that I have with officials is that when they make a call, they never come by your bench. And so what happens is as soon as they eventually make it around to your bench and you ask them, hey, what about that block charge from 3 possessions ago? They tell you that you got to move on. And I say, I can't move on because you haven't been here yet. And then it turns into who's on first. Oh, well, that wasn't my call. That wasn't my area. I can't talk about his call and blah, 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 blah. So you don't ever really get the clarification that you're looking for as a coach. And I like to try and get clarification for 2 reasons. 1, so we can keep some consistency with the officials. And then 2, so I can instruct my guys on, hey, you were holding him on his hip and they're going to call that all night long, or, you just were late and slid in late. If you could get there earlier, you'd get the charge, or, whatever the case might be. I think it's important feedback to get to relay to your team, especially for us who we like to be aggressive, we like to defend, we like to try and ball pressure, and getting, in foul trouble, as we've seen in a couple games during the course of my head coaching careers, has hurt us, sure. Not only from a players being on the floor standpoint, but opponents shooting way more free throws than we've shot. And a couple times it's been the difference in a game.
Couple of human nature follow-up questions to Brianne's question. First of all, when you see the list of officials when you walk onto the floor, and I'm not going to ask you to name names, but every once in a while, if you see somebody's name down there, does something pop in your brain saying, oh, God, we're going to get this, we're going to get hammered tonight, or, oh, this guy misses calls, or, you know what, this is a pretty good crew. I mean, it's human nature to
Absolutely.
Remember.
Absolutely. And there's certain guys that, you like their demeanor on the sidelines, because at the end of the day, just like you're a coach on the floor and you have your personality as a coach, they have their personality as officials, and there's certain officials that you can really have good conversation with. That you're going to be able to kind of have a back and forth with them, and they're going to be okay with it. And then there's certain officials you just can't say anything to. And I think as a coach, you have to adjust to the officiating just like the players do. If you have a crew that comes in and you know that those guys are people who have called it tight before, or have had a game of yours maybe that was hotly contested, you got to be a little bit more aware of early in the game how they're going to set the tone for the game. And so I think you definitely have to adjust. There's certain officials that, like I said, you can get away with a little more, and then there's certain guys that, you can't even start to have the conversation. But as a coach, you love those guys that you can kind of have a little bit of a back and forth with, and everyone understands that, you're just trying to coach your team and they're trying to ref the game.
I know on my side of the floor where I sit, I have a couple of favorites, and I have a couple of guys who aren't so favorite of mine, but.
Well, we were talking about it earlier, and I think Dews hates every official. There's not one official that Dews likes in any way, shape, or form. Jim Duzick, our sports information director, and fill-in color guy for Jimmy Elias.
That's right.
he's been known to go after an official or two on our broadcasts.
I know, and they used to call me the biggest homer in Pittsburgh, and that's until Jim Duzick joined the broadcast table. But in all fairness, he's just a fiery guy who just loves his Colonials. We could tell you that. All right, let's talk about the win at LIU. Obviously, it was a nationally televised game. A lot of people around the country got to see it. And before you and I talk about the game, we have a question coming in from Tom Kay from Arizona. He's listening in tonight on ESPN 970.
Tom Keeler, huh?
We
Checking
appreciate
in
that.
Lovelier weather than we have, that's for sure.
That's obvious. If he's in Arizona and we're in snowy Gibsonia here tonight, no question about that. He wants you to talk about your strategy in slowing down the pace of play at LIU. And that's something that Jim Duzick brought up in our broadcast on Saturday on the radio side, was that Robert Morris was trying to take every second out of the possession before taking that shot.
I thought it was just something that would be effective for us. Obviously, we understand how much LIU loves to control tempo and how good they are in the open court. And, I thought there were certain sets that we could utilize that would be able to get us shots for certain individuals during the half. But some of those sets were, pretty quick sets. They weren't very, in-depth in terms of ball reversal or multiple screening actions or whatever the case might be. And I thought that if we could maybe take a little bit of time before we got into the set, that it would help us control the tempo. Obviously, it's all predicated on you being able to be in the game, either be leading the game or, a possession or so, from your opponent. And we were able to stay, within a possession or be ahead a couple possessions for the entire game. So I felt we could kind of utilize that, slow the game down a little bit, then get into that set that we wanted to run and get the ball where we wanted to, where someone would be able to make a play or make a shot. And I just felt it was effective for us because I thought that there were at some points, our best defense might be keeping them off offense. And, we started to do it a little bit, and I thought it really worked well for us. Obviously, we'll have to come up with a new strategy the next time we play them because I'm sure they'll be ready for that. But, that's part of coaching. And like I said, I just thought it was an effective way for us to be able to kind of make it a half-court game instead of making it a full-court game.
And it worked out, no question about it. I'll tell you what else worked out. Both teams probably played 2-3 zone defenses more than any game that I've seen in the Northeast Conference in a long, long time.
And I think sometimes you go to that 2-3 zone for a couple reasons. One, obviously they're so great with ball screen action, trying to limit some of their ball screening and all the advantages they get. Jason Brickman, as we all know, is such a great passer and so gifted at making decisions based on the help that the defense shows. And, getting into that 2-3 zone limits some of that ability. And then I think on the other end of the floor, I thought we had some certain mismatches that we could utilize against man that zone would help cover up. And so I think both teams, used that zone as much as they could. And again, for us, getting into that zone is a little bit of a tempo stopper because when you get in the zone, I've heard Coach Boeheim, who's, the most famous zone coach there is, speak about, he doesn't care how fast the team plays. As soon as they get over half court and they see that zone, they immediately slow down for a second because your reads aren't as natural. Some of the areas where you're used to attacking aren't always the same. And so you really got to figure it out on each and every possession. And I thought it was very effective for us.
All right, that it was. Robert Morris defeated LIU Brooklyn 60-57. And our resident writer, obviously, who does such a great job, Paul Meyer, wrote a very wonderful article on the Robert Morris University official athletic website, rmucolonials.com today. It was called and entitled Shouldering the Load for the Colonials. And yes, there was a pun intended because we were talking about Belton Jones and the fact that he banged up his shoulder against St. Francis of Brooklyn. And frankly, he banged up a shoulder, and I don't think it was the same one in practice the night before. And then he comes in and hurts the other one. No one expected him to play. I don't think you expected him to play even up until game time on Saturday, but all of a sudden he comes out there. He looks like he has a half a football shoulder pad on that right shoulder. Jason Daly did wonders with him for 2 days, our trainer, and obviously he was ready to go. Not only ready to go, but he was dynamic in that game.
Well, it was funny how the whole thing kind of played out because on Wednesday night he got elbowed in his left shoulder, and it was almost like he had a dead arm, and he was continually working the thing out. And I asked him if he was okay, and he said, yeah, he just kind of took a shot in his shoulder. And then, the first possession of the game Thursday, it's his right shoulder that gets hit. And he tried to go back in the game on Thursday night, but it was just too much, pain. As soon as he got hit in it, it was very, very uncomfortable for him. And so, Friday they treated him and tried to, ice it and, keep range of motion and all those kind of things going. And Jason was on top of everything that he needed to do. And Velton was, really receptive to all the stuff that Jason was asking him to do. And, we get there on Saturday morning and, he's not getting dressed. And, I had kind of said to him beforehand, listen, if you're injured, don't play. We'll figure out a way to win, whether you're in the lineup or not. And, if you can go and you can help us, we'd love to have you, obviously. And we've talked about it before, how we trust Velton's a guy that if there's any chance he can go out and be productive, he'll be out there. And if he can, he's going to tell us that as well. And so, all of a sudden we're getting ready for pregame speech, and Jason comes down. I'm sitting there by myself down in the locker room, which is the most miserable part of the day for me because I'm just so anxious to get the game started. And I'm kind of sitting there in solitude. And Jason walks in, and he's sweating. I don't know what he was doing up there, but Jason was sweating like to death. And Velton walks in behind, and he's got his shoulder wrapped, and he says, I'm going to try and go. He said, I'll just spell Ant.
Sure.
So I said, okay, we'll get maybe, 10 minutes, 8 minutes out of him, a half, see how it feels, see what he can do.
And 8 minutes or 10 minutes is a lot better than no minutes at all.
Exactly. And so, especially with what we wanted to do from a defensive standpoint, pressuring the basketball and some of those things, we would need some bodies. And so our guys came down for pregame speech, and he comes into the locker room, and he's half dressed, putting his uniform on. And none of the guys thought he was going to play. And so they all of a sudden kind of like perked up, like, okay, Velton's going to try and give it a go. And, we threw him in there right away. And you could see that he wasn't really able to shoot the ball the way that, from the outside, just he just didn't have the extension, especially from the wrap that Jason had given him. And, but was able to get into the lane, was able to defend, was able to make some plays. And I think once he kind of got into the flow of the game, like I said after the game, adrenaline's quite a drug. And he just, he said, I feel fine as long as I don't take a shot in it. And so we kind of just kept going and rotating him through. And obviously comes up and makes, the biggest shot of the game.
26 minutes, 9 points, 3 assists, and 2 steals. He was diving on the floor like there was nothing wrong with him, and he got the game-winning shot, the floater down the middle of the lane.
And I think when you look at some of the guys around the country that, play with that kind of toughness and that kind of intensity that Velton plays with, they don't know any other way to play. So, we had that loose ball situation, right in front of the radio area in the second half where him and I think C.J. Garner, I mean, they just collided like, 2 linebackers. And Velton doesn't know how to stop. He's never stopped before. He's never pulled up on that kind of play. And so whether he's hurt or not, he's going to mix it up. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about going into the game, saying, okay, can he do any more harm to his shoulder? Because I know how he's going to play once he gets out there. And as much as he wants to tell me, hey, I'll just spell Ann a couple times, as soon as those competitive juices start to flow, he's going to want to be out there making plays. And so, Jason said there's no more harm that can be done to it. And he went out and he played a terrific game for us and really, really helped other guys get shots and help really calm our ball club at certain times during the game.
And, of course, down the stretch, it took a defensive play to make sure that that game was going to be in the W column, and it was. And it was a deflection by Lucky Jones and a steal by Carvel Anderson, who was a sharpshooter in that game as well.
Yeah, Carvel hit some big shots, but one of the things we had talked about and we always talk about when we play LIU Brooklyn is their ability to get out in transition. So Velton makes that floater, and all we kept talking about in the timeout right before that play was make or miss. If we miss, we got a foul. If we make, we better sprint back as fast as you possibly can and match as quickly as possible because they're so good making decisions and getting each other shots in transition when the defense isn't set. And so as soon as the floater went in, everybody sprinted back. We stopped the ball. The ball got rotated to the corner. Lucky with a closeout, and they tried to penetrate on him.
Right.
And all of a sudden he gets that deflection, and Carvel was right in the spot that we teach him to be at, and was able to kind of scoop that ball up and go down and make 2 free throws. But it was definitely a great team effort. Not only orchestrating the play to get the shot, but then making sure that we get back and communicate to each other to match up properly to try and get that stop.
And it wasn't all Velton Jones, of course. We're talking so much about him tonight, but let's face it, Lucky Jones, Carvel Anderson, Russell Johnson, you had mentioned, hit some big threes in that game. And Russell's long-range shot is starting to come back now at the late stages of the season.
It really is, and he's putting in some good work, getting in and getting some extra shots. And he really spearheaded the run to start the second half. He got in foul trouble in the first half.
1 minute.
We couldn't play him as much as we wanted. And then all of a sudden he makes 3 threes there to start the second half. And, we kind of gave ourselves a little bit of breathing room. And I think it changed the way that they had to play because they had to get somebody in to match up with Russell. And, Lucky, as well as, Stephen Hawkins played a great 21 minutes for us. Keith Armstrong played a really strong 4 minutes for us in the first half. Mike got in foul trouble, and we needed, somebody to come in. And LIU is a very physical, rebounding. They have great interior players, and I thought Keith did a very nice job. Anthony Myers obviously was terrific, and Carvel hit some big shots like you said. So you don't beat a good team like LIU Brooklyn without everybody contributing. And the more people you can have contributing, obviously, the more dangerous you are. And that's something that we talk about each and every practice, getting more and more guys on the same page, understanding, being detailed, and being able to execute game plans.
We're talking Colonial basketball here on ESPN 970 from Buffalo Wild Wings in Gibsonia. I'm the voice of the Colonials, Chris Shublin, with head basketball coach Andy Toole. And we have some folks who brave the weather to come out and join us here on Route 8 tonight in Gibsonia for the fabulous Buffalo Wild Wings location here in the far north
Out
hills.
of 58.
And we do this every Monday night during the basketball season. We pick a different Buffalo Wild Wings location each week. Matt, where are we going next week? I can't remember off the top of my head. Cranberry. Whoa, we're back in Cranberry again. That's a good location, too. We'll be back there. So we'll be in the North Hills again next week. We have a question that wasn't tweeted to us, but it was handed to us. Gary is here in the building tonight, and Gary wants to know, Coach, what is the biggest challenge you face in recruiting talent to Robert Morris University, and how do you address those challenges?
That's a great question from Gary, who is a proud RMU alum. and he can probably help us address it by helping us create a new facility on campus. But you know, there's a bunch of challenges you face in recruiting. Obviously, there's a lot of great opportunities and schools out there with good staffs and good programs that are recruiting, you know, quality student athletes. And so, you know, one of the things that we face a lot is just, you know, the continuing, you know, how much are we building the program? Because obviously everyone watches ESPN, everyone looks, you know, the 24/7, you know, media cycle of bloggers and Twitter, and, you know, so what kind of brand do you have as a program? And I think, you know, the way we address that is we address it on the court, you know, with just some of the success that we've had, some of the notoriety that our guys, you know, have received once we've, you know, whether it's win NEC championships or, you know, play nationally televised games. You know, that's one of the biggest things that we face. And then obviously from a parent standpoint, you know, they're always looking to make sure that their, you know, sons are being properly taken care of.
Sure.
And, you know, I think one of the things that we do on all of our visits is, you know, and I tell all of the recruits that come on campus, our visits are like reality TV. You're there and you're observing our program and our coaches and our players as if you weren't there. The way that we're going to interact with our guys will be the same whether you're there or not. The way that we're going to coach our guys is going to be the same whether you're there or you're not. And so you really can see and make a decision with your eyes wide open about what you want to do. And, you know, I think we have a, you know, I think we do things the right way. I think that we push and challenge our guys in a way that helps them improve and prepares them not only for the successful careers at Robert Morris, but then for life afterwards. And, you know, but we're not for everybody. And I want guys that want to be part of Robert Morris University men's basketball. You know, I'm proud of the university. I'm proud of the direction the university is going in. And we want guys that are going to represent the university in the manner that we expect. And so, you know, those are some of the things that we face. And like I said, we address it head on. We're completely open and honest in our recruiting, and we want people to understand exactly what they're getting into. I never want a kid, you know, to be recruited and all of a sudden walk on campus in the first day of practice and, you know, we start going 100 miles an hour and I start, you know, getting intense and ranting and raving, and they go, who's this guy? I've never seen him before. I think you got to understand that who you're playing for and what's expected of you when you get into, you know, a situation like, you know, making your college choice.
Andy Toole, the head coach of the Robert Morris University Colonials here at Buffalo Wild Wings in Gibsonia tonight. It's the Andy Toole radio show on ESPN 970. Speaking of parents, and I've seen you interact with the parents, and I know that many of them, particularly the players from the East Coast, their families end up at our ball games when we go to Brooklyn, when we go to Connecticut, when we go to Jersey. They're over there, and they come to the ball games, and there's quite a bit of interaction, not just between the parent and the student athlete, but the parent and the coach. I know that many of them come over and talk to you, and I know that you know, from time to time there have been some altercations here and there between the coach and the player, and obviously the parents call in and try to get things ironed out. Address the relationship you have with the parents of these kids that you're coaching.
You know what? I think it's important to be accessible to not only the players but also to the parents. And you know, sometimes, you know, there's people that have questions about, you know, what their son can do better or what they can do more of, and you know, we'll address that, you know, very easily. And you know, I think we put a lot of time and effort and thought into, you know, how we do things, how we run our program, how we prepare, how we practice, who plays, who shoots. And so, you know, we have, you know, pretty good backup for all the questions that might get asked. It's funny, a lot of times, you know, when we finally have conversation with the parent, the story changes because, again, you know, it's not an indication or indictment of our guys, but you know, it's every 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old. They're going to give you the information that's going to make them look good, or they're going to give you the information that, yeah, everything's great at practice. I'm working harder than anybody. I make every shot I take. I've never been scored on, and you know, I just don't know why coach doesn't play me for 40 minutes. And so sometimes when we have, you know, parent, coach, player conference calls, all of a sudden we get to the bottom of it, and none of that stuff is ever, you know, personal. It's, hey, this is what you got to do if you want to play more. Mom, Dad, you understand that? Do you understand that, player? Coach, this is what we're looking for from you. great. And then all of a sudden now we can move on and everyone's on the same page. I think that having that kind of communication is very important. You know, if there's ever an issue that arises, you know, we'll get on the phone with the parents right away and say, hey, just so you know, this is going on, so you don't feel that we didn't tell you something that was happening, or get blindsided when, you know, you get a notice from school, or, you know, whatever the case might be. So I just think having that open dialogue is very important, so that everyone's on the same page and everyone's working towards the same thing, the success of the student athlete.
All right, that's a great answer, and I know that's a philosophy that you believe in. I've seen it. I've seen it at work.
Yep.
I've seen it happen. All right, Andy Toole is the head coach of the Robert Morris University Colonial men's basketball team. We are here tonight live at Buffalo Wild Wings in Gibsonia. We're at Buffalo Wild Wings locations every Monday night, and almost, I will say 99.7% of the time we talk about basketball, but there's a football question that was tweeted to us, and I think this might be a loaded question from somebody you may know. This is Brent tweeting a question that says, which quarterback put on the greatest Super Bowl performance of all time? Now, I realize we're coming off of Super Bowl weekend, the Harbaugh Bowl last night, and obviously Baltimore ends up hoisting the Vince Lombardi trophy. But the question is, which quarterback put on the greatest Super Bowl performance of all time?
It's such a loaded question. Brent, I watched the Super Bowl with him last night, and Phil Simms did not have a very good game calling the game on TV, I thought. But as a New York Giant fan, and one of my earliest sports memories was, the Super Bowl in 1986 when the Giants beat the Broncos, and Phil Simms completed 88% of his passes and didn't have an incomplete pass in the second half of the game, and the Giants won 39-20 and basically scored 24 straight points. I said that Phil Simms might have had one of the greatest performances in Super Bowl history.
You said this last night.
I said it last night. And so 25 minutes later, as we dissected each and every Super Bowl that's ever been played, and we talked about, yards per completion, we talked about yak, we talked about, every stat possibly came up. And Brent did not convince me that Phil Simms didn't have the greatest performance of all time. He was voting for Steve Young in the Super Bowl, I think, '94 against the Chargers.
Yeah.
When Steve Young had six touchdowns and they just poured it on him. And two of the touchdowns were when they were up 25 and 24 points. Again, the internet's a dangerous thing when you can find your way around it and get some stats. But, yeah, Brent's trying to set me up. But I reminded him as a Steeler fan that Ben Roethlisberger's probably not in the conversation, at least for that first Super Bowl as a rookie or a second-year guy. And then even though he had a great drive to Santonio Holmes against the Cardinals, it wasn't his best game either. So I'd say two of the four all-time, obviously Phil Simms, and then Eli Manning's got to be in the conversation as well with some of the performances he's had in the last, two of the last 5 Super Bowls.
Spoken like a true Giants fan, I can tell you that. This is a
no
Jersey
bias,
boy.
No bias at all.
This is a Jersey boy.
President
he grew up on the shore.
President Delamo will like my answers. That's all that matters.
Well,
he's my boss.
He's another Jersey guy.
Exactly.
That all plays into this whole thing. So you watched the Super Bowl last night. What are your thoughts on the game itself and on the performance of the two coaches?
What a hard spot to be in as the coaches. I couldn't even imagine, playing something of that magnitude against someone you're so close with. It's hard even within coaching sometimes when you're playing guys that you have, close friendships with, right. Let alone, share blood and as close as they are as brothers.
Same bedroom when they grew up.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, very, very difficult situation. First half of the game I thought was extremely boring, to be honest with you. I was looking through the guide to see if there was anything else on that would be a little bit exciting. And then all of a sudden the power went out, and they went on a little bit of a run, and the second half was terrific. But Brooke stayed up for Beyonce's performance, and then she was out. That's all she wanted to see was Beyonce. And
Beyonce was hot. I mean, she blew the lights out of the place.
She absolutely did. And so I thought it was a great second half. First half, not so much. But an amazing story, I'm sure, for obviously the Harbaugh parents to have both their sons coaching NFL teams. That's hard enough as it is. And both of them are in the Super Bowl against each other.
All right. Now, I know you're a baseball fan, too, away from basketball.
I'm a Met fan. Yep, exactly.
Oh, man. He's killing us Pittsburghers here, I'll tell you that. Anyway, we'll get into that conversation a little bit later in the spring. Mm-hmm. But you've got a tough one coming up this Wednesday, and quickly, it's going to be Wednesday. It's going to be televised regionally on Root Sports Pittsburgh. It's St. Francis University of Loretto, PA, against Robert Morris. You already played them once this year and beat them.
We did, but they're continuing to improve. They're a very dangerous team. They actually went in on Saturday and beat St. Francis of Brooklyn, who we lost to on Thursday. So, we got to we got to prepare ourselves very well tomorrow and be ready for the game on Wednesday.
All right, we'll see you at the Toole Center Wednesday night, 7 o'clock tip, 6:45 pregame show on the radio. Root Sports Pittsburgh will carry it live on Wednesday night as well. My name's Chris Shovlin, play-by-play voice of the Colonials with head coach Andy Toole. We thank you so much for being here at Buffalo Wild Wings in Gibsonia tonight on ESPN 970.